I've read less than 10 comics in my life, but I recently discovered Daniel Warren Johnson, and now I'm 3 books deep this month. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the channel. I'm JB, a comic beginner and someone who's always been interested in comic book characters. I love the X-Men animated shows as a kid. I grew up watching all of the Batman movies. I recently started playing the Spider-Man video games, love those. But I've never really read comics aside from some of the Batman ones and literary graphic novels like Mouse. But a few months ago, another YouTuber named Mostly Andre, he dropped a video on doing a Powerbomb, and that book immediately just caught my interest. Like, I loved wrestling growing up, and the story just sounded awesome. And so I picked it up from the library and immediately just fell in love with it. And so now I'm here to talk about Do a Powerbomb, Transformers, and Wonder Woman. But before we get started, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps out the channel. And second, let me know in the comments how you guys read comics. As a beginner, I don't really know how to get access to them. My library doesn't have the biggest selection of comics. And I don't know if I want to be spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on this hobby. And I know it can get quite expensive. So what's the best way to get access to physical books? But anyways, thank you for your responses ahead of time. I appreciate you all being here. Now let's roll out. So as a newbie getting into comics, and for someone who reads a lot of books, a lot of my reading choices just begin with what excites me. And this cover immediately just caught my interest. There's this high-flying wrestler frozen midair. Everyone in the crowd is looking up. You combine that with the colors and the title of the book, and the energy just kind of jumps out of the page. As I said earlier, I loved wrestling as a kid. I was all about the Attitude Era, the Hardy Boys, doing Stone Cold Stunners on my friends. And so this was such a nostalgic read for me. It kind of reminded me of a combo between Street Fighter and ECW, a little bit of Dragon Ball Z. And so for those of you who haven't read it, I'll give you a brief plot summary. This book follows Lona Still Rose as she tries to follow in the footsteps of her mother, who tragically passed away in this wrestling accident in the ring. And so because of this, no one wants to train her. She has an uncle and a father in the business, but they're trying to keep her out of it for her own safety and to protect her. But after one of her matches, a necromancer approaches her and recruits her to join this tag team Death Life tournament, where if she wins, she can bring her mother back to life. And of course, she couldn't give up this opportunity. She joins that. And so for the rest of the book, we see her in this Mortal Kombat style tournament where she has to go up against teams like the Luchador Robots, Orangutans, the Pizza Party. And the cool thing about this book is the matches are really high flying. They have chairs, there's barbed wire, wrestlers are somersaulting through tables, there's all sorts of blood and violence. And it has all the dramatic twists and turns that we love about wrestling, like the pins and coming out of the pins. And so the art is really gritty and energetic in the best way. The level of detail, I think, is so good that you can feel the impact of the wrestling. But I think more than all of that action, where this book really shines is the heart of the story. Like, Lona is a character that we can really root for. She's wrestling for grief. She's wrestling for legacy. So there's a strong emotional arc to her character here. We see wrestling develop as a sort of metaphor for life's journey. And I think this volume is a great introduction to her character. And aside from that, if you're a wrestling fan, you're going to love all the Easter eggs from Eddie Guerrero to Jim Ross. And this was just a fun read, and I had a great time with it. And I think as a comic beginner, it's a great one to start with because you don't really need to know any of these characters to enjoy it. And so, yeah, definitely check this one out. Next up is Transformers, and I'll start by saying I don't have the biggest background knowledge on Transformers. The last time I followed the franchise was with the Michael Bay and Shia LaBeouf movies. And so before reading this, I think I can only name like 3 characters: Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, and Megatron. I was also familiar with the name Starscream, but I don't remember if he was an Autobot or a Decepticon. And so at times, especially at the beginning, I struggled with figuring out who was who. Like, obviously I know what Optimus Prime looks like, but at times I couldn't really differentiate between some of the other characters. Sometimes they would have logos on their chest and on their shoulders, but other times they didn't, especially when they were fighting, kind of mixing in the action. But eventually I did notice some patterns with their colors and how some of them took the shapes of trucks and cars. But while reading this, I did have to look up some of the characters' names, and I think you do get a bit more out of it if you're a Transformer fan coming into this. Regardless, though, I had a blast with this one. I don't know if there's anything more fun than giant robots doing wrestling moves and just ripping each other's arms apart. For one thing, I didn't expect this book to be this violent, but I think that does raise the stakes of the conflict. We see how important it is for these two robots to be fighting for this energy, but also for them to be protecting Earth. And I think that really humanized Optimus Prime for me. There were some really cool moments where we see Optimus Prime out in nature. One scene with the deer is really heartbreaking. Then there are some other really cool close-up shots with his face that really reveal how thoughtful and compassionate he is. But at the end of the day, he's still a force to be reckoned with. Like, He has this line towards the end of the book where he says, "I desire peace, but I am no fool." And I think that line just sums him up perfectly. He is the perfect balance between heart and violence, and I think that really makes the story work. It's very similar to do a Powerbomb, that you get high energy action, you get art, and you get characters that you actually care about. And so even if you're not a huge Transformer fan, I still recommend checking this one out. And last but definitely not least, Wonder Woman Dead Earth. This might be my favorite of the three and the one that surprised me the most. Going into this, again, I knew nothing about the character, knew nothing about Wonder Woman. I've never seen any of her movies. I knew she was an iconic character, but I could not name a single villain or supporting character from her world, which I find kind of interesting because her logo is so iconic, but not much else about her world has really broken into the general public. I'm not really aware of many of her adaptations. I know the one in the 70s is really popular. I know she had that 2017 film that had pretty good reviews, but I'm curious, like, why hasn't her character really gotten as much love as some of the other superheroes like Batman, Spider-Man, Superman? But anyways, this book was awesome, and it was fun learning about her in real time and her origins. If you like post-apocalyptic stories with strong characters and insane action, I think this is a must-read. The art style does such an incredible job of establishing a world that is war-torn and morally decayed. I also love that this book was in this larger format style because I think it's just perfect for Johnson's art. It's very stylized and very cinematic and just kind of gave me those Mad Max vibes with some of the early orange colors depicting this world. And the art, I think, is very reflective of the book's themes and the world that this takes place in. There was also a bunch of epic large-scale battles that kind of reminded me of Frank Miller's 300 combat scenes. And this book just had so many cool moments for me. It just gave me a version of Wonder Woman that I wouldn't have imagined. And that opens up with her at the very beginning just ripping off this monster's throat. And there's also some really bloody, warlike scenes. She's rocking Batman's belt in this. I learned about her backstory and how she got her strength. I didn't know anything about her bracelets, but I also learned about those and just how powerful she is as a character. And I don't know how much of this is true to her character, but I really appreciated the context in finding out what makes her special and where she got her powers from. But maybe outside of all of her power, I think her greatest strength is her compassion and her love. She's this really inspiring character, and many of the characters in here were just ready to go to war for her. And no spoilers, but I think my favorite part of this whole book was this one scene with a spine where she used a spine as a weapon. My jaw dropped to the floor. It was just incredible. There was just so many times where I just stopped to appreciate the creativity that Johnson put into the story and the illustrations. But in addition to the art, I think the story was super compelling as well. Like, I love these slow reveals, the flashback sequences that gave me kind of insight into what happened into this world. Kind of like we were discovering things alongside Diana, and I really like that narrative structure. So overall, I'm a sucker for post-apocalyptic vibes and dark stories with a heart, and if that's you too, you should definitely check this one out, and I would just love for DCU to turn this into a film. Yeah, so that is my month with Daniel Warren Johnson. As a beginner comic enthusiast, I just love all of his work so far. The art style, the emotional storytelling, the violence. I just connected with all of it, and I am sold with reading everything he comes out as a creator. I think up next I'm going to check out Murder Falcon and Extremity, so I'm excited to jump into those. If you have any other recommendations for any of his works or other comic creators that are very similar, please let me know. I'm excited to get into reading more comics. I'm going to be making tons of library requests to see if I can get my hands on more titles, but that wraps up this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you on the next one.